Have you ever felt like God picked the wrong person? Like, you looked in the mirror and thought, there's no way he's calling me for this. You're too small, too scared, too much of a mess. If that's you right now, you need to hear what God told a man named Gideon. Because God didn't just pick the wrong person. He picked the least of the least. And then he did something with him that nobody saw coming. And before this video is over, you'll understand exactly why God sees something in you that you can't see in yourself yet. Welcome back to the Word, where faith comes alive and truth hits home. This month, we're exploring the Bible's most misunderstood characters. The ones who weren't the main character, but whose stories might matter more than you think. Today, we're talking about a man named Gideon. And let me tell you, if you've ever doubted yourself, if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever looked at the size of your problem and thought, I can't do this, this one is for you. Because God took a man who was literally hiding in a hole, and turned him into a warrior. And the way he did it, it'll blow your mind. Let's get into it. Alright. Let's set the scene. We're in ancient Israel. And things are bad. The book of Judges opens with a pattern that keeps repeating like a broken record. The Israelites follow God, then they drift, then they get crushed by their enemies, then they cry out for help, then God rescues them. Rinse and repeat. At this point in history, a group called the Midianites had been terrorizing Israel for 7 years. 7 years. Can you imagine? Every harvest season, they'd roll in like a storm of locusts, destroying crops, stealing livestock, wiping out everything the Israelites worked for. The Bible says the land was left with nothing. No crops, no sheep, no oxen. The Midianites, the Amalekites and all the eastern peoples, settled in the land and ruined it. Israel was reduced to utter poverty. Judges chapter 6 verse 3-6 people were hiding in caves in the mountains just to survive. This wasn't just poverty. This was despair. This was rock bottom. Sound familiar? Maybe you're not hiding in a cave. But maybe you're hiding from a situation, from a calling, from a conversation you know you need to have. Maybe fear has made your world feel really, really small. That's exactly where God shows up in Gideon's story. Judges chapter 6 verse 11. An angel of the Lord appears, but not in a temple, not to a priest, not to anyone important. He shows up under an oak tree in a town called Oppress. And who does he find? A guy named Gideon. Threshing wheat, in a winepress. Now if you don't know farming, let me break that down for you. Wheat gets threshed out in the open on a hilltop where the wind can blow away the chaff. You do not do it in a winepress, which is basically a pit dug into the ground. But Gideon was so scared of the Midianites seeing him that he was trying to hide his food while he prepared it. This is our hero, hiding, scared, in a hole. And then the angel speaks. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Judges chapter 6 verse 12. Mighty warrior. Gideon must have looked around like, wait, are you talking to me? Because his response was not exactly the confident reply of a general. It was more like a confused, frustrated, borderline sarcastic comeback. Pardon me, my lord, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders? The Lord has abandoned us. Judges chapter 6 verse 13. Real talk, doesn't that sound like something you've prayed before? Where are you, God? If you're with me, why does everything feel so wrong? Gideon wasn't being disrespectful. He was being honest. And God didn't punish him for it. He doubled down on the call. Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Judges chapter 6 verse 14. Notice God didn't say, go in your strength. He said, go in the strength you have. The strength that comes from knowing who's sending you. That's a totally different thing. But Gideon still wasn't convinced. He pushed back. My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. Judges chapter 6 verse 15. The weakest clan. The least in his family. This man was the definition of an underdog. And God's reply, simple. 5 words that changed everything. I will be with you. Judges chapter 6 verse 16. That's it. Not, here's your battle plan. Not, here are your resources. Just, I will be with you. Because in the kingdom of God, that's enough. Gideon believed the calling. Kind of. He built an altar and named it "The Lord is Peace." That's beautiful. But then, he asked for a sign. He laid a wool fleece on the ground and said, "God, if you're really going to save Israel through me, let the fleece be wet with dew in the morning while the ground stays dry." The next morning, the fleece was soaked. He squeezed a whole bowl of water out of it. The ground, bone dry. But then, and I love this because it is so human, Gideon comes back and says, "Okay God, please don't be angry. But can we do it one more time? Only this time, opposite. Fleece dry, ground wet." Most of us would expect God to say, "Seriously, how many signs do you need?" But God did it again. Because he understood Gideon's fear. He was patient with the doubt. He met Gideon exactly where he was. If you're in a season where you're asking God for signs because the fear is just too loud, that's okay. God doesn't shame you for your doubt. He meets you in it. He just won't let you stay there forever. Gideon finally steps out in faith. He rallies the troops. 32,000 men show up ready to fight. For context, the Midianite army. 135,000 soldiers. Plus camels. The Bible literally says their numbers were like locusts, and their camels, as countless as sand on the seashore. So 32,000 vs 135,000. Those odds are already terrible. And then God says, "You have too many men." Judges chapter 7 verse 2. Too many. God is looking at a 4-to-1 deficit and saying, "That's still too many." Why? Because God was about to do something that couldn't be explained by strategy, numbers, or military skill. He didn't want Israel walking away from this victory thinking they did it. He wanted zero doubt about who deserved the glory. So that Israel may not boast against me that her own strength has saved her. Judges chapter 7 verse 2 sound familiar? How often do we rush to take credit for God's work in our lives? How often do we think, "I worked hard for this. I earned this." This moment was a direct challenge to that mindset. God told Gideon to let anyone who was afraid go home. 22,000 men left. Just like that. Now they had 10,000. Still too many? Apparently yes. So God gave them a final test, how they drank from the river. Most soldiers knelt down and buried their face in the water. 300 of them cupped the water with their hands and kept their eyes up, alert, watching. Those 300, they stayed. Everyone else went home. From 32,000 to 300, a 99% reduction. If you were Gideon right now, what are you feeling? Because I'd be panicking. But this is exactly how God operates. He doesn't need a lot to do something extraordinary. He never has. If this is speaking to you so far, make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Might be a good time to tap that bell too. The night before the battle, God does something quietly extraordinary. He tells Gideon, "Go down to the enemy camp and listen." If you're afraid, he adds, "Bring your servant Purah with you." See that? God saw the fear still sitting in Gideon's chest. And instead of demanding it disappear, he gave Gideon one more gift. Gideon crept down to the edge of the Midianite camp in the dark. Tents everywhere. Campfires flickering. Thousands of enemy soldiers. And right at that moment he overheard two soldiers talking. One of them was describing a dream. A loaf of barley bread tumbled into camp and collapsed a tent. The other soldier immediately interpreted it. This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands. Judges chapter 7 verse 14. The enemy was prophesying Gideon's victory. In their own camp. In their own words. God made sure Gideon heard it. Judges chapter 7 verse 15 says, "When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and worshipped." This is the turning point. The man who hid in a winepress is now kneeling in worship in the shadow of the enemy's camp. Something has shifted inside him. The fear is still there. But faith is bigger now. Here's the battle plan God gave Gideon. I need you to picture this. Take your 300 men. Split into 3 groups. Give each man a trumpet, an empty clay jar, and a torch hidden inside the jar. No swords. No spears. Trumpets, jars, and fire. In the middle of the night, they surround the camp. And then on Gideon's signal, every man smashes his jar. 300 torches explode into the darkness at once. 300 trumpets blast from every direction. And 300 voices scream, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Judges chapter 7 verse 20. The effect was immediate. Total, absolute, chaos. The Midianite soldiers woke up in pure darkness, suddenly surrounded by fire and noise from every direction. They had no idea what was happening. They started attacking each other. They turned on themselves. And then they ran. The Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. Judges chapter 7 verse 22. Israel didn't win this battle with better soldiers. They won it with obedience and a God who fights for his people. The weapons were ridiculous by military standards. Torches and clay pots. But when God is the strategy, the weapons don't have to make sense. Think about that for your own life. Maybe the weapon God gave you doesn't look impressive. Maybe it's your story. Your voice. A skill others underestimate. A conversation you keep putting off. God doesn't need you to be impressive. He needs you to be obedient. Gideon and his 300 chased the Midianite army even after the battle. Exhausted. Running on empty. But they pressed forward. Along the way, some Israelites refused to help them. The leaders of Succoth mocked Gideon. Penuel turned him away. But he kept going. He captured the 2 Midianite kings Zebah and Zalmunna, and justice was served. After it was all over, the people of Israel came to Gideon with a proposal. Rule over us, you, your son and your grandson, because you have saved us from the hand of Midian. Judges chapter 8 verse 22. And here, Gideon said something remarkable. I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. Judges chapter 8 verse 23. He turned down a dynasty, a crown, generational power. Because he understood the truth, this victory belonged to God. He was just the vessel. Under Gideon's leadership, Israel had peace for 40 years. But Gideon's story doesn't end perfectly. He made a golden ephod from the plundered gold, and the people began to worship it as an idol. Even a great leader can have blind spots. Even a mighty warrior can stumble. And after Gideon died, the people went right back to their old ways. This is one of the most honest parts of this story. Even when God does miracles through us, even when we get it so right, we are still human. The lesson isn't that Gideon was perfect. It's that God used him anyway. Here's what I need you to walk away with today. You might be a Gideon right now. Maybe you're hiding. Maybe you've been hit by something that felt like a Midianite army: financial pressure, a broken relationship, a dream that seems impossible, a calling that scares you half to death. And maybe you've been asking God the same question Gideon asked. If you're with me, why has all this happened? And maybe God has been saying the same thing back to you that he said to Gideon, I will be with you. Judges chapter 6 verse 16. That's the whole thing. That's the whole message. Because here's what Gideon teaches us. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He doesn't look for the biggest army. He looks for the most faithful 300. He doesn't need your strength. He needs your yes. The Fleece tests. They tell us that God is patient with our doubts. The 300 men. They tell us that God doesn't need a lot. He just needs what's available and willing. The torches in the clay jars. They tell us that God's power often looks foolish to the world right up until the moment it destroys what was keeping us in fear. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9. Paul wrote that thousands of years after Gideon lived. But it could have been Gideon's testimony. Because the man who hid in a winepress, afraid, doubtful, the least of the least, ended up becoming one of the most celebrated leaders in Israel's history. Not because of who he was, but because of who God is. So wherever you are right now, maybe it's time to stop hiding. Maybe it's time to pick up your torch, smash your jar, and trust that the God who called you knows exactly what he's doing. The victory isn't yours to manufacture. It's his to give. All you have to do is show up. If this is speaking to your heart, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss more powerful videos that help you unpack the gospel and grow deeper in your faith. Next up, Manasseh, the most evil king in Israel's history, and the redemption story that'll leave you speechless. Trust me, you need to hear it. Stay blessed.